This is Rio de Janeiro, a city of stunning beaches, vibrant culture, and a dangerous underworld hidden in plain sight. This is the story of Victor Dantas, a young diver whose passion for the ocean pulls him into a world of crime, betrayal, and survival. From the depths of the sea to the heart of the favela, his journey will test his courage, his loyalty, and his life.
Recap Spark.
The story begins at the famous Copacabana beach in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where we meet Victor Dantas, a young, passionate, and highly skilled scuba diver. Victor spends most of his time underwater, exploring the river and coastlines of Rio. It's more than just a hobby for him. It's his life. One evening, Victor is out diving with his close friend Fred. As the sun starts to set, Fred suggests they head back before it gets too dark. But Victor isn't ready to leave just yet. He says he saw something unusual underwater and wants to take one last dive to check it out. Fred tries to talk him out of it, but Victor insists and goes back in alone. What he finds changes everything. At the bottom of the river, Victor discovers a dead body. Shocked, he immediately rushes back to the surface to tell Fred.
There's a dead body!
Then, without wasting time, he dives back down and pulls the body up by himself. Once he gets to shore, they call an ambulance. Later, Victor reports the discovery to the police, but things quickly take a strange turn. The officers don't believe his story. They say the man he found was a trained military diver, and it doesn't make sense for someone like that to drown so easily. As they continue questioning him, they start making it seem like Victor had something to do with the man's death. Victor tries to explain that the diver probably went too deep and got trapped under a piece of metal. Just then, a senior officer, the colonel, walks in and tells the other officers to leave the room. He wants to speak to Victor alone. Unlike the others, the colonel doesn't accuse Victor. Instead, he tells him he looks like a smart, honest young man, and asks if he's ever considered working for the country. Victor immediately says no. He wants nothing to do with politics or the military, but the colonel says this isn't about politics. He tells Victor that there is a different kind of war going on, and people like him with real diving skills are valuable. Before leaving, he gives Victor his contact and tells him to get in touch if he ever changes his mind. Later that night, Victor returns home. His father is waiting for him and asks where he's been all day. When Victor says he was out diving, his father loses his temper. He tells Victor to stop wasting his life chasing dreams and go find a proper job using his degree. But Victor stands his ground. He tells his father that diving is what he loves and he's going to prove him wrong by making a living out of it. The argument escalates, and Victor, frustrated and hurt, packs a small bag and walks out of the house. The next day, Victor shows up at the colonel's office. He says he's willing to hear the offer, but only if it doesn't involve politics. The colonel reassures him that this mission isn't political. He explains that illegal buoys have been showing up in the ocean. They believe these are being used for drug drops, and they need someone with diving experience to investigate and map them. From this point forward, the colonel states that all communication will be conducted through a code name, Arcanjo.
Using another name, Arcanjo.
Victor accepts the mission and begins his work along the coast of Bahia in 1970. During one of his dives, he notices a buoy floating in a suspicious area. As he dives to check it out, a ship passes overhead and drops a package into the water right at that spot. Victor swims over and finds a huge stash of cocaine. He immediately returns to shore to map the location. While relaxing at the beach near his hotel, a waitress approaches him and says he has a phone call waiting. When he picks up, it's Arcanjo. He tells Victor to stop diving and wait for new instructions.
Stop diving and wait for further instructions.
A little while later, the same waitress returns, this time offering him a drink. They start chatting casually, and she asks how he can afford such a nice hotel and who he's there with. Victor explains that his diving work pays for everything. Before walking away, the waitress writes down his room number and hands it to him, telling him that her shift ends at 7 p.m. That night, Victor gets ready and heads over to her room with a bottle of wine. But when she opens the door, things take a surprising turn. She doesn't seem interested in drinks or small talk. Instead, she tells him to put the wine down. They've got work to do. Victor looks confused until she pulls out her ID and explains everything. She's not just a waitress. She's his new partner, Arcanjo sent her. The package she found is part of a major drug trafficking operation. She's been tracking the ship that dropped it all the way from Ibiza. That night, some dealers are scheduled to come pick it up. There's no time to assemble a full dive team, so it's all on Victor. His job is to be in the water before the dealers arrive. As soon as he sees them retrieving the package, He needs to signal her and then get out of there fast. Later that evening, Victor dives into the water and waits. Not long after, the dealers arrive and begin collecting the package from the bottom of the ocean. Victor flashes his light to signal his partner, but the dealers spot the light and immediately start firing at him. Victor quickly dives deeper to escape. Realizing he's in danger, his partner urgently calls for backup, hoping they can reach him before it's too late.
Quickly, they'll kill him!
The episode picks up right where we left off. After spotting Victor's signal, the police arrive at the scene with a boat and quickly order the armed dealers to drop their weapons and surrender. The gunfire ceases. Realizing the danger has passed, Victor swims back to the surface. The police arrest the suspects and Victor returns safely to his hotel. A few days later, Victor heads to the military headquarters to meet with Arcanjo. Eager and restless, Victor asks when he will be sent on his next mission. However, Arcanjo advises him to slow down. He tells Victor that he's not sufficiently trained to take on back-to-back missions and needs more preparation. Victor disagrees. He insists he's ready and doesn't require any further training. Eventually, Arcanjo gives in and tells him about an urgent situation. He explains that the drug operation Victor discovered earlier has now shifted locations. The cocaine shipments are no longer passing through Bahia. They're being moved to the favela. Arcanjo says they need someone who can go undercover, blend in with the locals and find out who's receiving the shipments. But he also makes one thing very clear. This mission is dangerous. Victor is confident about the mission and asks Arcanjo when he will start. A few days later, Victor arrives at the edge of the favela. This town is unpredictable and outsiders don't last long. To survive, Victor must create a convincing new identity that fits in. If the locals sense anything fake, he could be exposed, and no one, not even Arcanjo, can save him. Victor is still deep undercover in the favela, trying to earn the trust of the people around him. He's been regularly visiting a mysterious shaman priestess who lives at the top of the hill. During one of his visits, she tells him something unsettling, that someone has cast a spiritual curse on him. Concerned, Victor asks how he can get rid of it. The priestess tells him he'll need to keep coming back to perform sacrifices. On his way back from one of these visits, things take a dangerous turn. A group of gang members notice him walking down the hill. They've seen him coming around often and are starting to get suspicious. One of them stops him and questions why he keeps visiting the hill, but never buys any drugs or alcohol, which is unusual in that area. Victor stays calm and tells them he only comes to see the shaman priestess for spiritual healing, but the gang member doesn't buy it so easily. He invites Victor to join them for a drink, saying that if he really belongs there, he should be able to chill with them like everyone else. Victor follows them to a local bar. They pour him a drink and keep asking questions like why he's been coming up for over a month, but never drinks or smokes. Victor repeats that he's under a spiritual curse, and the priestess is helping him get better. As they're still drinking, the boss Ribeiro suddenly walks in with his men. He heads straight to the counter and asks the bartender for a drink. Then he notices Victor and immediately wants to know who he is. The bartender quickly vouches for him, saying Victor is cool and has been coming around often. Still suspicious, Ribeiro signals one of his men to search Victor. They check him thoroughly, but find nothing. Satisfied, Ribeiro tells his men to leave him alone, and they all return to drinking. But just when things seem calm, Victor spots one of the men slowly pulling a gun from his pocket. The man starts walking toward Ribeiro as he pulls the gun. Thinking fast, Victor jumps up and tackles the guy. A struggle breaks out between them as Victor tries to disarm him. After getting control of the situation, Victor explains he thought the man was about to shoot Ribeiro, but Ribeiro bursts out laughing and tells him to relax. The man is his brother-in-law, and he would never try anything like that. Ribeiro tells Victor to calm down, and they all return to celebrating. Later that night, Victor leaves the favela and finds a phone booth to call Arcanjo. He gives him an important update. Ribeiro is back in the favela. The next day, Victor heads back up the hill. He walks over to the bar and chats with the bartender Narinjo, who's now become one of his closest friends in the area. While they're talking, Ribeiro calls Narinjo over and starts complaining. He wants to know why business is slow, why the cocaine isn't moving fast enough. Narinjo explains that they have just received a huge order from a wealthy, high-profile client. The problem is that this client wants the drugs delivered directly to their home, something that requires slipping past tight security. Ribeiro looks around at his crew and quickly realizes none of them can pull this off. Then his eyes land on Victor sitting at the bar. He asks Narinjo if he trusts Victor. Nariño nods and says Victor is a good guy. He can be trusted. Ribeiro calls Victor over and tells him he has a job for him. He says Victor has the perfect look, someone who could blend in with rich people and not raise any suspicion. He wants Victor to deliver the package himself. Victor immediately panics. He tells Ribeiro he can't do it, but Ribeiro doesn't take no for an answer. He reminds Victor that if he wants to be accepted in the favela, he has to prove his loyalty. With no other option, Victor agrees. He takes the package and sets off to make the delivery. But just as he's heading down the hill, a police car pulls him over. The officers begin searching him. One of them tells Victor to open his backpack. Nervous and sweating, Victor hesitates. The officer grows impatient and opens the bag himself, and there it is, a package of cocaine. Victor thinks it's over. He braces for the worst, but then something strange happens. One of the officers leans in and whispers something into his colleague's ear. Suddenly, the officer who opened the bag closes it again, hands it back to Victor, and calmly tells him to be more careful and to make sure he hides the product properly next time. Victor is frozen in shock. He can't believe what just happened. The police just let him walk away with the drugs. After narrowly avoiding arrest, Victor continues with the cocaine delivery. As night falls, he boards a bus headed toward the buyer's location. While the bus is still on the road, a group of military officers stops it for inspection. They board the bus, moving from seat to seat, checking everyone's ID and asking questions. When one of the officers reaches Victor, he asks if Victor is a student. Trying to stay calm, Victor simply replies that he's a diver. The officer doesn't seem convinced. Without warning, he grabs Victor's bag and starts searching through it. Victor holds his breath, knowing exactly what's inside. But before the officer can dig any deeper, one of his colleagues calls out to him. They found something suspicious elsewhere. The officer quickly zips up Victor's bag, hands it back without another word, and walks away. Victor gets off the bus at his stop and makes his way to a nightclub where the buyer is waiting. Once there, Victor discreetly hands over the package. The exchange is smooth, and Victor leaves without any issues. The next day, Victor returns to the favela. The gang welcomes him like a hero. Ribeiro is impressed by how well Victor handled the delivery and praises him in front of everyone. He tells Victor it's time to celebrate and offers him some cocaine. Victor refuses at first, saying he's not into that. But Ribeiro insists, saying one shot won't kill him. Caught in the moment and not wanting to raise suspicion, Victor finally agrees.
That's it, kid!
After a few days away, Victor returns to the favela. He climbs back up the hill to see Nariño, the bartender and one of the few people he genuinely trusts there. While they're talking, Ribeiro walks in and welcomes Victor back. Ribeiro sits with Victor for a quiet conversation. He starts opening up, not as a criminal, but as a man who sees himself differently. He tells Victor that the drug business wasn't part of some grand plan. It just grew over time. He says as long as there's demand, the supply will never stop. He insists he's not a thug, just a businessman, responding to the market. Ribeiro tells Victor he has another job for him, another package that needs to be delivered to the same address as before. Victor doesn't argue. He takes the package and prepares to leave the next day. When morning comes, Victor makes the trip and arrives at the house. He knocks on the door and a woman answers. She asks who he's looking for, and Victor says he's there to see Marcio. Her face changes instantly. She asks if Victor is one of the people supplying drugs to her son. Trying to stay calm, Victor lies. He says he's just a diving instructor and wants to take Marcio out for lessons. The woman softens a bit and lets him in. She tells Victor that her family is falling apart, that her son's addiction has destroyed their home. Victor gently asks where Marcio is. She tells him he hasn't been home for 4 days. With the package still in his bag, Victor thanks her quietly and leaves. The next morning, Victor wakes up in his room, the drugs still untouched in his backpack. As he's gathering his thoughts, his father walks in with a heavy look on his face. He hands Victor a newspaper without saying a word. Victor opens it and freezes. Right there on the front page is a photo and a headline. Marcio has been found dead from a cocaine overdose. Victor doesn't say a word. He just sits there silent, devastated, and drowning in guilt. The next day, Victor returns to the hills of the favela. He walks straight up to Ribeiro, drops the cocaine package in front of him, and explains that he couldn't make the delivery. The buyer, Marcio, had already died before he got there. Ribeiro says he already heard the news. He doesn't seem upset. Instead, he invites Victor to sit down and have a beer. He tells Victor not to feel guilty about Marcio's death. He explains that every cent he earns from cocaine goes right back into the community, feeding people, helping families, keeping the favela alive. He encourages Victor to stop dwelling on the negatives and focus on the good he's doing for the people around him. He calls for a barbecue and takes Victor over to the bar where the drinks start flowing again. As the night goes on, Ribeiro begins to share his big dream to expand his drug operation far beyond the favela and push cocaine to every corner of Rio. A few days later, Victor visits the military headquarters and meets with Arcanjo. This time, Victor is firm. He says he's done. He can't keep going with this mission, but Arcanjo isn't ready to let him walk away. He tells Victor that Marcio's death wasn't his fault, but if the cocaine trade continues to grow, many more people will end up just like him. Victor stays quiet for a moment, thinking about what could happen if he quits now. Then, he makes his choice. He decides to stay in the mission. He reveals Ribeiro's plan to expand the drug network across all of Rio. He explains that the cocaine is delivered every Tuesday, hidden inside a refrigerated truck. Once it's in, the drugs are mixed with other substances to stretch the volume and increase profits. According to Victor, they're making 10 times more money selling cocaine than marijuana. And worst of all, the local police are part of the operation. Some even sell weapons to the gang. Hearing all this, Arcanjo is furious. He turns to his team and announces that the army and civil police will launch a massive raid on the favela the following Tuesday. But first, they'll wait for Victor's signal. A few days later, Victor returns to the favela. When he reaches the hilltop, something feels off. The place is quiet. He heads to the bar and finds Nariño sitting alone. Victor asks him where everyone is. Nariño explains that the coke house has shut down because the delivery truck hasn't shown up for days. Victor invites him for a beer. As they drink, one of the gang members walks in and asks Nariño if the truck has arrived yet. Nariño says no. Customers are walking away and they're losing control of the business. Victor casually asks what's going on, but Nariño shuts him down. He tells Victor it's none of his business and he should stay out of it. After finishing his drink, Victor tells Nariño he's heading to the shaman priestess, but that's just a cover. Instead, he sneaks down the hill to make a call to Arcanjo. He tells him the coke house is down and they should hold off on launching the operation. After the call, Victor returns to the favela, but as soon as he arrives, Nariño confronts him. He says he went to see the shaman, and Victor wasn't there. Suspicious, he presses Victor asking where he went. Before Victor can respond, Nariño tells him Ribeiro wants to see him. Victor starts to panic. He's taken to Ribeiro, who doesn't waste time. He asks Victor if he's ever held a gun before. Victor says no. Ribeiro grabs a pistol, points it at him, and hands it over. He tells Victor they have a problem. Their supplier has stopped sending cocaine, so they're going to take it by force. Within minutes, the gang arms themselves and pile into a car. When they reach the supplier's location and step out of the vehicle, they're ambushed. The police are already waiting. The area is surrounded. Chaos erupts as the gang realizes they've been set up.
What the fuck is this?
But before shots are fired, he lowers his weapon and surrenders. Victor follows. One by one, the rest of the gang drops their guns. No one fires a shot. They all surrender, and the police move in to arrest them. The next morning, Victor and the other arrested gang members sit silently in their holding cell. The atmosphere is tense. Suddenly, a guard arrives and unlocks the door, but only calls out Victor's name. The others are stunned. They stare at him with suspicion, and in that moment, a seed of doubt spreads. They begin to think Victor is a snitch. Victor is taken to the officer's office, where he's told he's free to go. No explanation, no charges, just released. He knows how things work in the favela, and if the gang truly believes he snitched, they won't let it slide. His life could be in danger. So he goes straight to Arcanjo and demands answers. Victor asks him why he released him. Now the entire gang is suspecting him, but Arcanjo looks just as confused. He swears he had nothing to do with it. Victor is shocked. If Arcanjo didn't do it, then who did? He tells Arcanjo that if he doesn't return to the favela, it'll only confirm their suspicions, and he might blow his cover. Arcanjo warns him. If he goes back, he's on his own. The favela is beyond his protection. Days later, Victor returns to the hills. One of the gang members spots him and tells him the coke house is shut down, and Ribeiro is waiting for him. Victor follows him, walking into a dark, quiet room. Inside, he finds a chilling sight. Ribeiro's brother-in-law, known as Crybaby, is tied to a chair with blood all over his face. He's being tortured. Ribeiro looks at Victor and says he wanted him to see this, to witness firsthand what happens to a snitch. Crybaby insists he wasn't the snitch, and begs Ribeiro not to kill him. Ribeiro reassures him that he isn't going to. but instead signals one of his men to shoot him. And Crybaby is shot dead in front of Victor. Terrified, Victor rushes outside to breathe. Ribeiro follows and hands him a towel to wipe the blood off his face. He tells Victor Crybaby was his in-law. He didn't want to kill him, but he had to. Later that night, Victor returns to Arcanjo shaken. He shows him the gun that Ribeiro gave him and tells him Ribeiro believed his in-law was the snitch and executed him. He tells Arcanjo he's now fully part of the gang. Arcanjo tells Victor this was never how the mission was supposed to go. He tells Victor the mission is over. He's shutting it down, but Victor refuses. He tells Arcanjo he's closer than ever. He's earned their trust. He's inside now and he can finally get the information they've been chasing for years. Arcanjo hesitates, then tells Victor that if he really wants to go all the way, he needs real training. He needs to become a proper police officer. Victor agrees. Early the next morning, Victor returns to the hills with a neatly folded suit he has brought for Ribeiro. It belonged to Victor's father and was never worn. When Ribeiro sees the suit, he notes how fine it looks. With a suit like this, Ribeiro can go any place he wants without looking suspicious. Later that day, Victor and Ribeiro arrive at a horse racing track, both dressed in their best. Ribeiro smiles, as well-dressed patrons give them respectful looks. They place a small bet and head to the bar for a drink. Ribeiro says he never imagined Victor could bring him into a place like this. Victor smiles. He tells Ribeiro that all this was meant to be a gift, a farewell gift. Ribeiro laughs at first, thinking it's a joke. Victor thanks him for everything he's done for him and for welcoming him into his community and trusting him. He tells Ribeiro he's just a diver and never belonged in a gang. He wants a normal life, a peaceful life, something quiet and honest. Ribeiro's smile fades. He tells Victor things are just now starting to take off. Victor says this life isn't for him. Ribeiro tears up the betting tickets in anger and walks away without a word. Time passes. He returns home and begins studying, learning how to shoot. Years go by. Victor trains hard, fights harder, and rises through the ranks. After 7 long years, he becomes a respected and experienced officer. One day at the station, a man walks in, desperate for help. He talks to Victor, who's now a full-grown police officer, and tells him that a gang leader named Piccole is trying to take his 15-year-old daughter. The officer beside Victor is furious. He says Piccole has been terrorizing the area for too long, and it's time to take him down permanently. Victor agrees. The team begins planning an operation not just to arrest Piccole, but to wipe out his entire gang. A few days later, they launch the mission. The officers hide inside the bar, owned by the man who made the report, waiting for Piccole to show up. Minutes later, Piccole storms in with his men and demands the girl. The father refuses. Piccole pulls a gun. That's when Victor and his team stand up and open fire. A shootout breaks out. Victor chases one of the gang members through the slums and shoots him down. When he gets close, he realizes he's just shot a teenager. Back at the station, the officers are celebrating, cheering over Piccole's death. But Victor sits in silence, devastated. One of the officers walks over and asks why he's not celebrating. Victor tells him he shot a child during the operation. The officer tells him the boy was a thug with a gun and he shouldn't worry. He assures Victor he'll get used to it, but Victor doesn't feel that way. He's not sure he ever will. On their next mission, they decide to try and take down the king himself, Victor's old boss, Ribeiro. It's been 7 years since Victor bid him farewell at the horse race. The day finally arrives for the big operation, and the police move in at night, creeping through the slums. They storm Nerino's bar first. Nerino reaches for his gun, but the officers are faster.
Cow cabecile.
He surrenders. As he's handcuffed, he looks up and sees Victor, the boy from 7 years ago. Now a fully grown officer, Nerino is speechless. The team pushes up the hill toward Ribeiro's hideout. A gang member sees them and runs to warn them, but it's too late. The officers burst into Ribeiro's room before he could react. They pull their guns and tell him to surrender.
There's no need to shout. Don't need to shout. I am putting the gun down.
Seeing no way out, Ribeiro drops his weapon, then someone says Victor's name. Ribeiro looks up and immediately remembers Victor. Everything clicks. Ribeiro realizes Victor was the snitch, the one he never suspected, the one he killed his own in-law for.
Did you destroy with blow.
Victor tells him to turn around and handcuffs him.
We're going back to New York.
Before Ribeiro is taken away, Victor leans in and tells him, "Don't worry. You're going back to the same prison you came from. You'll survive." But Ribeiro just smiles faintly and says, "That's not going to happen." Victor doesn't understand what he means. A few hours later, he does. On the news, a reporter announces that Ribeiro, the biggest drug lord in the favela, was shot dead during a police shootout. Victor stares at the screen. He sees Ribeiro's lifeless body and knows the story being told is a lie. He goes straight to Arcanjo and demands the truth. He tells him Ribeiro surrendered. He was handcuffed. There was no shootout, so why was he executed? Arcanjo doesn't deny it and tells him to calm down. Victor explodes. He calls the system corrupt and says he's done. He's quitting for good. But Arcanjo looks him dead in the eyes and tells him this is the war he's been trying to win for years, and now his name will be mentioned among the elites.
He's the colonel. He's here too.
Hey, that'll be a lot of money, right?